This is a DVD review of a movie I've actually owned for several years, but never got around to reviewing it until now. That movie is this one right here, Creature from Black Lake. I actually got this as a double DVD along with Sasquatch: The Legend of Bigfoot, which I'll get around to reviewing someday. It may be my next review, because I'm thinking about watching it probably later today and giving it a review. But this is for Creature from Black Lake. It's a pretty interesting story and pretty fascinating writing. I love the writing on it. It's written by a fellow named Jim McCullough Jr., who is a screenwriter and filmmaker in his own right. In fact, he is in the movie as Orville Bridges. But let's get to a little bit of the plot points of the movie. It starts out with two college students, anthropology graduate students of the University of Chicago. Their names are Pahu and Reeves, and they are portrayed by Dennis Fimple and John David Carson. Fimple has been seen in several TV shows and also movies, such as House of a Thousand Corpses and the 1976 version of King Kong. He plays Pahu, who has an affinity for hamburger, French fries, and Coke. And the reason for that is explained in the movie, because his father was a chicken breeder, and all they had to eat growing up was chicken. So Pahu has an affinity for hamburger, large fries, and a Coke. His partner, played by John David Carson, Reeves, is kind of a dark-haired, fair-haired ladies' man, you might say. He is somewhat the more sensible of the two. Pahu is a former Vietnam veteran. Matter of fact, he mentions several times in the movie his experiences in Vietnam. And they travel from the University of Chicago to Louisiana, northern Louisiana, where they are looking for information on a creature that lives in that area. Lives in the area around Oil City, Louisiana. That's a real town, by the way. Down at a place called Black Lake. They hear of a trapper who lives in the area, a fellow named Joe Canton, played by the ever-cantankerous and well-known character actor Jack Elam. Jack Elam, of course, known for his roles in westerns, also in the Cannonball Run movies. And apparently, Joe was out trapping with his buddy Willie, and all of a sudden Willie got pulled down into the water by this creature. Anyhow, Pahu and Reeves reach Oil City, and they run across the local sheriff, who warns them in not so many words to stop asking about, because they begin asking about the creature in the area. Creature, of course, is the southern version of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. They go around asking about the creature. He warns them to stop. They actually eventually meet a young fellow named Orville, and they give him a ride back to his farm. That's Jim McCullough Jr., who is the writer of the movie and also contributed a song to the soundtrack called I believe it was Exits and Truck Stops. And they reach his farm where he's living with his grandparents. His grandfather is veteran character actor Dub Taylor. Hee Haw, Bonnie and Clyde. You may have seen him in Bonnie and Clyde. And what happens is they immediately tell Orville's grandfather, even though Orville had told them not to say anything about the creature. They tell they tell Orville's grandfather what they're in the area for. Well, the grandfather all of a sudden gets a little testy and says, well, don't say anything in front of my wife, because she's still sensitive about it. what happens is they offer a reward to the grandfather to give them information on the local creature. Orville, it turned out, had told them that the creature caused a wreck which killed his parents when he was a child, which meant that he was raised by his grandparents. And his grandfather had seen the creature one night and heard it scream. And eventually they go in for a good chicken dinner, just what Pahu needs, right? Of course, Pahu is not too happy when the meal is chicken. So he does eat some of the chicken, but he also eats some of the fresh vegetables. And he slips up and makes a reference to the creature when they hear the mule, the Bridges mule. The grandfather promptly kicks them out of the house. They go and spend the night in the barn, where they have an encounter with the creature, a sound encounter, and they manage to record its god-awful roar. Next morning, they're back in town. They're going to order, Pahu's favorite meal: burger, fries, and Coke. Well, Reeves decides that decides to ask Pahu. He says, I talked to Dr. Birch, that was the anthropology professor that sent them on the quest. He played the sound for the professor. The professor didn't think that the sound was real. And by the way, there are spoilers in this review, by the way. For those of you who have not seen Creature from Black Lake, you might want to turn away now. You might want to cut this video off now. Those of you who have seen it, you know what I'm going to be talking about. I'm kind of going over the synopsis of the whole movie, you might say, because I really enjoyed the movie. Really, there are spoilers in this review. I'm just warning you right now. Anyway, they go to the diner. They're in the diner, and then Reeves decides to play the sound, which promptly scares the waitress who is carrying their food. They don't get their burger, fries, and Coke. They are kicked out of the establishment, but not before coming to the attention of a couple of comely young ladies. And the young ladies follow them outside to their van. And interestingly enough, one of them is the sheriff's daughter. And they go out to the campsite. They go out to establish a campsite, Pahu and Reeves. And the daughter of the sheriff and her friend come out there, and they get into a little bit of a love fest, and they share some beer. But then, as Becky, that's the sheriff's daughter, is getting cozy with Reeves, she sees the creature, the Sasquatch, which promptly alerts Reeves, who turns around. They run back into the tent. Reeves grabs his rifle. He's about to shoot this thing because it's hanging around the tent, but then it runs off. And what should come through the flaps of the tent but the sheriff? Sheriff tells his daughter to go home, and her friend as well, and takes the boys to the slammer for the night. Well, while all this is going on, old Joe Canton is asleep in his ramshackle shack, and that's essentially what he's living in, a shack. When the creature decides to pay him a visit and tries to break in through his window. So after having a few snorts of moonshine, he picks up his rifle and takes pot shots at the creature. Drives to the sheriff's department, tells the sheriff that the creature tried to come break in on him. Sheriff knows he's drunk. Joe promptly passes out on the floor. A very well done pratfall by Elam, by the way. Very good comic timing on his part. And he winds up in the slammer with Pahu and Reeves. Well, the next morning, Joe sleeps it off. He's released on his own recognizance. The boys are released as well, but they're warned to get out of town, which of course they ignore. They follow Joe Canton out to his place. Joe Canton tells them a story about finding a bunch of dead hogs out in the woods and not hearing a single sound from any woodland creature out there. So Joe tells them where this place is. So Pahu and Reeves promptly head out there, where they have a disagreement, an argument. And what eventually happens is Pahu and Reeves, they kind of settle their differences. And then the creature actually attacks them. First it attacks Pahu, who has been separated from Reeves. Then it goes after Reeves, who is in the van, pushes the van down the hill, where it crashes into a tree, and then overturns the van. But not before Reeves manages to get out an SOS to the sheriff. Well, the creature is standing on top of the hill, screaming at Reeves. Reeves is taking a few shots at it. So Reeves takes off, but with good timing too, because after the van is overturned, not too long after that, it explodes. So Reeves runs away, believing that the creature is giving chase. He goes and he eventually hides behind a tree. He hears something approaching. He's got a knife. He's already abandoned the rifle. Takes the knife and unfortunately accidentally plunges it into Pahu. Pahu had apparently recovered from his injury long enough to stagger into the forest. But all is not lost. Not to worry, the two are found by the sheriff and by Joe Canton, promptly taken to the hospital. Reeves had suffered a broken arm from being rolled down the hill in the van, and Pahu is recovering in the hospital bed. And then Pahu wakes up, and Reeves says, "Hey, we got to start this all over again. We got to get back out there." And Pahu's like, "Oh, we got to start the whole dang thing all over." No, he's upset they have to start the whole dang thing all over again. Actually, it was Pahu that said, we got to get this together. We got to get this solved." And the two men clasp hands, and the movie ends with the song "Truck Stops and Exits," or is it "Exits and Truck Stops," by Jim McCullough Jr. All in all, I really like this movie. I really enjoy it. I really did enjoy it. It's got a great plot. The acting is great. You got Jack Elam and Dub Taylor, two veteran actors that are in it, and they both really do a great job. They're never tedious and they're never boring. The flashbacks are pretty enjoyable, especially the flashback of of Orville. Well, it's not enjoyable that his parents got killed, but I mean it helps to establish the story. It really moves the story along. And the direction by Joy N. Houck Jr., who plays the anthropology professor at the beginning of the film, is really well done. And the music, interestingly enough, was also done by the same guy who did the music for Legend of Boggy Creek, Jaime Mendoza Nava, who also did the music for some of the Disney nature films back in, I think, the 60s. So all in all, I do recommend, if you can get a hold of it, get Creature from Black Lake. It's a great movie, really enjoyable. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Only reason I don't give it 5 stars is because they didn't show the creature a whole lot. They showed it just enough, but I would have loved to have seen more of it. But they showed it, but I think it was more, I have to say it was more effective not showing the creature full on, to be quite honest, because it did look a little ridiculous, it being a gorilla suit, or a bad suit. But I do recommend getting Creature from Black Lake. I believe it's available on Amazon, the DVD for Creature from Black Lake, so I do recommend getting it.